Chapter 30. Be a charming conversationalist. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is said to have once left a dinner party raving about Oscar Wilde's gift as a conversationalist. But you did all the talking, his companion pointed out. Exactly. Conan Doyle said. Stephen Fry. Your charm quotient is entirely determined by the way you look, listen, and speak to people. But there is an additional quality that those who have charm enjoy: they are great conversationalists. Being a focused and patient listener is essential to charm. Using a pleasant voice and not talking fast also raise your charm quotient. Another key to being charming is to be sensitive to what others want and don't want to talk about. If the people you're speaking with want to unload their feelings or just talk about trivia, let them. It is true that there are those who will go on forever about things that are unimportant or boring to you. And it's hard to be charming when you are being bored out of your gourd. Some people will talk endlessly about their problems and their personal lives. You don't want to be impolite, so what can you do? Usually you have two choices. One is changing the subject 180 degrees, the other is trying to grin and bear it. But when you've decided that enough is enough, there is another choice for the true charmer. You can use a well-placed question. For example, a 180-degree change would be if you were to take over the conversation and switch abruptly to another topic. If someone is pouring out her heart about a pet dog, you suddenly start talking about your interest in intergalactic travel. A better way is to do a 20 or 30-degree shift and slip in a comment about your own appreciation of dogs. Then you might parlay into a question about dog shows. What did you think of the Best in Show pick at Westminster Kennel Club this year? Or performing dogs, dogs for the blind, rescue dogs, or some tidbit about pets and vets. Your tools for charming others. In your next conversation with a friend or colleague, look for an opening to change the subject obliquely, into a slightly different direction, 20 or 30 degrees off center, so the change of conversation is almost imperceptible. Try interjecting a well-placed question. While you may not be able to change the subject entirely, you'll have charmed someone by keeping the conversation meaningful to that person. It's a wonderful opportunity to be creative while focusing on someone else's needs instead of your own. Making others feel special is one of the keys to becoming a disarmingly charming person.
Chapter 31. Steer the conversation. The true spirit of conversation consists more in bringing out the cleverness of others than in showing a great deal of it yourself. L.A. Breuer. The purpose of steering the conversation is not to dominate it, that would be the opposite of charm, but to make sure that, with your support, it continues to go in the direction the other person wishes so that his or her interest and involvement are constantly engaged. Imagine yourself in a social situation. You're standing there alone, minding your own business, with a plate of snacks in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. Out of the blue, somebody launches at you and immediately starts talking about himself. I do this, I did that. In 10 seconds flat, you're thinking, how can I get out of here? Now, let's imagine the same situation. Only this time somebody comes over to you and in 10 seconds flat has you talking about yourself. Who would you prefer to spend time with? There's no contest. Talk about what the other person cares about. All of us enjoy talking about the topics we're interested in, especially when the listener seems to enjoy it too. When people discuss a topic that's important to them, they tend to reveal a great deal about themselves to sympathetic listeners. They show their likes and dislikes, their preferences, beliefs, and ideas. When you are the listener in a conversation, you must listen closely to discover the various paths you can take in steering the conversation. What you're looking for is a way to keep up your end of the conversation while encouraging others to take over as much of the conversation as they like. An added bonus is that you can often learn as much from people with whom you have little in common as those with whom you agree. An open mind is a receptive mind, and it creates the endearing manner of the charming person. Your tools for charming others. The surest way to steer any conversation is to ask questions that begin with who, what, why, when, where, and how. Any question that starts with one of these words cannot be answered with a yes or no. The response requires facts, figures, feelings, and details. And the person who asks these questions has control. One of the most powerful ways to elicit reactions, responses, and opinions is to ask the questions, "How do you feel about that?" Or, "What do you think about that?" whenever a story or anecdote is told. These questions almost always elicit a more extensive answer, and the person speaking will think that you are both charming and intelligent just for asking.
Chapter 32. Do your homework. Knowledge is pleasure as well as power. Francis Bacon. Anytime you are getting together with someone, socially or professionally, whom you particularly want to impress, do your homework. Learn what you can about that person before you actually meet. It's the best way to be charming and interesting to others. As Dale Carnegie once said, you can make more friends in a day by being interested in others than you could in a year by trying to get them to be interested in you. A good investment. The higher the value you place on a relationship, the more time you should invest in learning about the person before you meet. Find out as much as you can about her or his likes and dislikes, hobbies, educational background, business interests, and social activities. Armed with this information, you can lead the conversation in many different directions that you know the person will enjoy. The idea is to know more about these people than they know about you. Brian on the value of preparation. Some years ago, I was building a national sales organization. I soon discovered that it was easier to take over an existing branch than it was to set up offices, recruit salespeople, and train from scratch. I learned of a successful business owner with a crack sales team who was discontented with the company he was representing. I decided to recruit him and all his people for my business. In asking around, I discovered that he was heavily into numerology and made all his decisions based on the numbers of the birth dates of potential business partners, as well as the days of the month and week. I got a couple of books on numerology, read up on the significance of particular numbers, and then arranged to meet with him on the best day of the month, numerically speaking. One of his first questions of me was my birthday. I was prepared. I told him that it was a certain day, month, and year that added up to a lucky number for business relationships. At the end of the meeting, he joined my organization and went on to be a highly productive member of my network. The preparation was the key. Seek first to understand. Sometimes it's not possible to obtain information, especially if you're meeting someone for the first time. In this type of situation, you must be completely focused on the other person. When you first meet, talk about yourself as little as possible. There's a wise old saying, you never learn anything when you're talking. Think about that. You can't talk and listen to people at the same time. It is only when they talk and you listen that you will learn anything about them. If they seem reluctant to open the conversation, you take over with the intention of getting them to talk as soon as possible. You can begin by talking about what's current or prominent in the news, avoid politics or religion until you know more about them, or by making reference to a recent hit movie or popular television program, books, sports, or fashion. If you've mentioned a movie, ask them what they have seen lately. Ask what kind of movies they prefer, and so on. Find a subject of interest. Here's an example of how you can piggyback on what another person is talking about. Suppose the other person says, "I'm so frustrated by the way people drive nowadays. There's no consideration for anyone else. Nobody has patience anymore. They just want to get to wherever they're going as fast as they can, and you'd better get out of the way." Let's analyze the possibilities in this simple statement. It's safe to say that this person has a bee in his bonnet about something. But what? About driving in general? Perhaps. About inconsiderate behavior? Maybe. About other people's lack of patience? Possibly. There are 3 different directions you could take the conversation safely. You could reply with, "I agree," and then proceed to briefly talk about an incident that happened to you. That approach is particularly useful if the other person seems to be running out of conversation. Always remember that the more you can learn about other people during a conversational exchange, the greater will be your potential influence on them. The more and better questions you can ask that piggyback on their background and interests, the more they will find you to be charming. Your tools for charming others. Remember, the person who asks questions has control. There are 3 powerful questions you can ask of any new acquaintance that will enable you to control the conversation and appear charming at the same time. First, you ask, "What sort of work do you do?" Most people are deeply interested in their work. It plays a central role in their lives and is a major source of their identity. They love to talk about it and describe what they do to others. Then, when they have told you what they do, you ask, with great interest and curiosity, "How did you get into that line of work, anyway?" This question will invariably be answered with all kinds of details about the person's history, experiences, and background, all explained in the form of a life story. Sometimes the story can go on indefinitely. People usually feel that the story of their careers to this point is one of the most fascinating stories ever told. The speaker may slow down periodically to determine if you are really interested or if you are just being polite. Whenever he pauses in his story, you ask, "And then what did you do?" He will immediately expand on his last comment and continue telling you more of his story. Whenever he slows, ask, "And then what did you do?" He will be completely charmed by you. You can ask other, similar questions as well. "Tell me more about that. How did you feel? And what did they do? What happened next?" If you like, you can introduce your own thoughts. When you do say something about yourself, resist the temptation to become too talkative. To pass the ball back to the other person, end your comment about yourself with another question to get the other person talking again.
Chapter 33. Keep the ball in their court. The chief ends of conversation are to inform or to be informed, to please or to persuade. Benjamin Franklin. Charming people keep up their end of the conversation by passing the ball back and forth easily and naturally. Your goal is to participate actively in the conversation while at the same time encouraging your conversational counterparts to take over as much as they want. You are like a tennis player who concentrates on keeping the ball in play. Like a tennis coach, you hit the ball so your student can reach it and get an opportunity to hit it back. The longer the rally lasts, the more valuable it is for the student as well as for the conversationalist. Reading each other. Most conversations begin with polite, social banter. These light exchanges allow both parties to gauge the mood and receptivity of the other person. You can then shift the conversation to more profound matters, depending on the direction you want to go. One of the best ways to keep the conversational ball in play is to use questions that spin off from what you're already talking about. For example, imagine that at the beginning of the conversation you began talking about food. You say, "Have you tasted these snacks? They're delicious." The other person replies, and then you speak again, introducing a new question. "I must say, my enjoyment of food always threatens my waistline. What type of foods do you prefer?" Whatever the answer, you agree. "Me too," you say. "I love most foods as long as they're well prepared and tasty. Do you eat out a lot?" The other person gives an answer, then you continue. "I think the best home cooking type restaurant in town is." That comment leads into the next question. "Have you ever been there?" The person answers, and then you continue. "You must try it. Just about everything they make is exceptional. Do you have any restaurants that you particularly enjoy?" For each answer, you continue with a follow-up question. "Do you enjoy eating out?" And so on. Obviously, the conversation could go in 100 different directions, but, as you can see, the basic idea is to keep the conversation bouncing back to the other person. It is not complicated or difficult to do. It just involves putting your ego on the back burner and attending to the needs or interests of the other person. It is the key to being charming. Your tools for charming others. In conversation, remember that it is not about you. It is about the other people around you. Most people are so concerned about themselves and the impression they are making, they lose their naturalness and spontaneity. When you talk to another person, forget about yourself. Don't worry about being liked or popular. Instead, focus on making others feel liked and popular.
Chapter 34. Don't kill the ball. The success of the actions of great men depends more upon the purity of their hearts than upon the means of their actions. Vedas. To kill the ball is a tennis term. It's what you do when your opponent is out of position. You pounce on the ball and hit it so hard that you win the point. When you and another person are having an argument, that is what you generally try to do. You try to find a point of fact or position where you can win without your opponent being able to respond. But when you are trying to be charming, it is utter madness to try to stake out a winning position. The last thing you want is for the conversation to fall out of charm because you are beginning to find yourself in disagreement with the other person. Then you are in the potentially dangerous position of wanting to kill the ball and with it, all your efforts so far. Brian on trying too hard to impress. When I was a young firebrand, I got involved in politics at a time when the state was convulsed with political acrimony. I spent hours studying and reviewing every possible fact on the key issues of the day. I wrote letters to the editor that were published regularly in the major newspapers and was regularly featured as a guest on the controversial radio shows. I really knew my stuff. I would argue, debate, and overwhelm anyone who wanted to discuss the issues of the day. I was like a verbal Zorro, slashing skillfully at any opponent and even at my friends. Then one evening, I was at social gathering with a lot of prominent people. When I arrived, they were gathered in groups talking and bantering back and forth. Knowing I could dominate and win any political conversation, I walked up to a group of business people I knew and began speaking about something in the day's news. As I opened my mouth, as if on cue, the four men glanced at me and then dispersed quickly in four different directions, leaving me standing there by myself. It was a lesson I never forgot, and I never again attempted to use my verbal prowess to dominate a conversation. Do you want to be happy or right? No matter how strongly you feel or how ridiculous you think other people's ideas may be, avoid even the tiniest sense of conflict. Conflict in a conversation is a certain charm buster. That doesn't mean you can't be firm in your opinions, but don't let the idea of winning the point overwhelm your true purpose, which is to be warm, genial, likable, and a pleasure to be around. In a word, to be charming. Your tools for charming others. First, be clear about your intent in any conversation. It is to be charming. It is not to win the point or to impress others with your cleverness. Second, avoid conflict at all costs. It is an immediate charm buster. It's difficult to be perceived as being charming when there is even a semblance of hostility in the air. Third, you may be pleasantly firm with your opinions, but don't try to kill the ball. Present your point of view gently, tentatively, and then let it go. Don't become so involved in being right that your charm is obscured in a cloud of argument. Finally, only take over the conversation when other people make it clear that they want to hear from you. When they ask a lot of questions about you, that means they are most likely interested in you. Oblige them, but don't risk becoming a bore by going on too long. When it comes to charm or winning the point, if you win, you lose.
Chapter 35. Get in step with the other person. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Arden Sweat Martin. Timing is everything in getting through to people, especially in the area of charm. As it says in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for every purpose under heaven. Your job is to determine when it is. Have you ever tried to talk with others only to find yourself out of step with their mood? You're cool and mellow, they're agitated and uptight. You're feeling life's a ball, they're down in the dumps. The two of you are worlds apart and any attempt to make a connection fails. You may try to be supportive and reassuring, but nothing seems to work. You just can't connect. Why is that? It could be because, at that moment, the two of you have different rhythms and are moving at different speeds, like automobile gears grinding. It is the same with people. You have to find a way to mesh gears, to make sure that you and the other person are in sync, so that no matter how different you are, you can create rapport. Practice mirroring and matching. Long before the advent of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, professionals used an acting exercise called mirroring and matching to learn what it was like to be a leader or follower. The exercise trained actors to work in harmony with each other by synchronizing their movements or behaviors. For example, one person would make up a tune and hum it, and the other would try to hum the same tune seemingly at the identical time. Two people would, with each other's cooperation, become a mirror image of each other. Most of us have the latent ability to adapt to different types of people, but, for all kinds of reasons, we don't. Can you imagine what it would be like if you could only relate to people exactly like you? How narrow your world would become. It's the reason many people become so inflexible and judgmental. If you don't do it the way I do it, if you don't see the world exactly as I see it, then you're wrong, unworthy, irrelevant. People with charm avoid being inflexible and judgmental. They enjoy seeing the world through others' eyes as well as their own. That is one of the most fundamental secrets of charm, being able to see the world through the other person's eyes. Your tools for charming others. The next time you are in a conversation, try this exercise. First, consciously mirror and match the other person or people with whom you are conversing by listening to their speech and watching their body language. If they speak rapidly, you match them. If they speak fairly slowly, you do the same. If they gesture a great deal, so should you. If they are restrained in their gestures, you be the same. Second, whatever seems to be their topic of the day, try to see it from their point of view. Nod, smile, agree, and offer reassurances. The idea is to get them to say in their minds, I am very comfortable with this person. We have so much in common. We are very similar. We all tend to like and feel at ease with people who seem in tune and in harmony with us. We find them charming.
Chapter 36. Practice makes perfect. What we learn to do, we learn by doing. Aristotle. Practice your new charm skills whenever you can. When you first learn new techniques, they may feel a little awkward. This is normal. It is only when you repeat these charm skills in conversations with real people that you learn them to the point where they become second nature. It is not enough that the players on a football team work out and learn and practice the plays. It's the experience they get, game after game, that allows them to develop conditioned reflexes. Make these skills automatic. As you practice and repeat these techniques, you will automatically program the behaviors of being charming into your subconscious mind. It will then take over, and these techniques will happen naturally and easily. That's been our goal from the beginning. You've seen the concentration and effort in a baby learning to walk, or a child learning to ride a bicycle, or an adult learning to play golf or square dance. Pure, dogmatic, do-it-by-the-numbers repetition allows us to do many things without having to think about them. When you boot up a computer, certain programs automatically come into operation. If there were no programs already installed in the computer's memory, just like they are installed in your subconscious, then you'd have a blank screen and a blank mind. Your tools for charming others. Practice every skill you've learned so far on every occasion. Focus on one skill at a time. Use the skills of charm with your family, friends, new acquaintances, and people you work with during the day. Practice will give you the experience and confidence you need to be charming in almost every human interaction. Treat each person you meet like $1 million customer, like the most important person in the world. When you approach people this way, you will make them feel wonderful about themselves. They will find you completely charming.
Chapter 37. Translate skill into art. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. Proverbs 22:29. Once you have all the techniques needed to create charm, there are some personal commitments that can only come from you. It is when these attitudes are added to your listening, looking, and speaking abilities that your well-practiced techniques rise above themselves and become the art of charm. Your tools for charming others. Blend all your abilities together into the art of charm by incorporating these attitudes into your listening and speaking habits. These are the commitments that will bring pleasure to you and others. Resolve to be pleasant and pleasing with each person you meet. A resolve to be gracious and understanding, no matter what is going on. A resolve to be caring, considerate, and non-judgmental. A resolve to be quick to smile and quick to praise. Paradoxically, it is only when you put the other person ahead of you that you end up ahead yourself.
Chapter 38. Now you have to do it. There is no substitute for talent. Industry and all the virtues are of no avail. Aldous Huxley. A wrestling coach told one of his athletes, "You have real talent and you work hard, and that's great. However, if you want to be a top wrestler, you need lots of experience. If you want to be a top athlete, working out is not experience, conditioning is not experience, and training is not experience. They are what they are, no more." The coach was saying that only by going out there and wrestling competitively would this athlete gain experience. The same thought applies to nearly everything we do. Thinking about it isn't doing it. Getting ready isn't doing it. Practicing it isn't doing it. Visualizing it isn't doing it. Doing it is doing it. There's no other way. To get all the seams ironed out so that you can act effortlessly and naturally, you have to do something over and over again under real-life circumstances until you don't need to think about it anymore. The secret to performing at your best is to condition your mind so thoroughly that your behaviors and responses are easy and automatic. You have to do a lot of charming. Your tools for charming others. Visualize yourself in a social or business situation, and see yourself as relaxed, genial, warm, friendly, and charming. Imagine you are exerting your charm on another person and they are smiling and enjoying your company. Affirm and repeat to yourself regularly, "I am a completely charming person." Every time you say these words, create a mental image of yourself charming another person and enjoying it. Finally, to program your subconscious mind with the elements of charm, continually act as if you are a world-class charmer. Resolve to walk, talk, gesture, and smile exactly as if you already exert a magnetic influence on everyone with whom you come in contact. Allow your conditioned reflexes to guide the way. You don't have to make it happen, you let it happen. You have already begun to experience the power of charm. Now you have to believe in your charm and enjoy it. Always stay in the moment. For a charming person, the only time is now. There's no next time, no tomorrow, no I'll try again. You can only be charming when you are fully focused on the other person and nothing else. As Ram Dass said, "Be here now."
Chapter 39. Roll out the charm. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. Robert Frost. Your ability to charm others will be like the cherry on the parfait, socially, and money in the bank, professionally. Think of the enormous value your newly acquired charm will have in your social world. You will make new friends easily, be the person everyone would like to talk to at a party, delight your friends and family, and charm the pants off total strangers. The key to advancement. In the business world, can you imagine the advantages your charm skills will give you? You will make more sales to customers who are eager to buy from you. You will negotiate more effectively, buying at lower prices and selling at higher prices. Your company will make you the key person to meet important business contacts. Your colleagues and superiors will look forward to spending time with you because they value you not just for your intelligence but for your charm as well. You will be paid more and promoted faster. Your personal and market value will be higher than you could ever have expected before. People who can help you will open doors for you, and opportunities to advance will increase. Now it is all up to you. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Who doesn't enjoy being with someone who seems to appreciate them, cares about them, listens to them, responds to them, who makes them feel important and treasured? Who doesn't like to spend time with a charming person? Don't you?
Special bonus section. The power of charm on the telephone. Many of us spend vast amounts of time on the telephone. With the advent of cell phones, more people are chattering away in any and every place you can imagine. The development of telephone charm can dramatically increase your effectiveness in dealing with other people. Try these simple techniques. Step 1. The first impression. You know the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Often that first impression isn't created face-to-face, but on the telephone. Many sales professionals and business people never actually meet their customers in person, they do business solely on the phone. They are successful with this technique because they develop telephone personalities that come across charmingly and persuasively. A common experience. True story, a customer called up an appliance company and a woman's voice answered abruptly, K&B. The caller said, "I beg your pardon," and she again said, K&B, in the same grim, totally charmless manner. The caller paused and then asked gently, "Why didn't you say good morning?" There was silence. Then the caller said, "You have such a nice speaking voice, I would love to have heard you say good morning." Still silence. "Could you say it now?" Another silence and then, finally, "Good morning." The effect was striking. By now her voice and manner were totally friendly, there was, in fact, a smile in her voice. The customer responded by saying, "That was terrific, thank you." The customer's impression of the receptionist, and the company she represented, changed radically from her first, K&B, to her last, "Good morning." What a little thing to do, to smile, and what a difference it makes. Don't forget, a smile can be heard and felt in your voice on the phone. The listener might not smile, but you must. Step 2. Looking for clues to how someone speaks and listens. The beginning of a telephone conversation gives you a great opportunity to discover how the person on the other end of the line communicates. You will soon discover whether their conversation is dominated either by what the person thinks about things or how he or she feels about things. Psychologists call them cues, systematic cues and heuristic cues, respectively. We call them clues. The words people choose and the way they sound as they speak are clues to what is important to them at that time. When you talk and listen to other people, be prepared to synchronize with whatever communication mode they are using and respond with more of the same. Details versus emotions. For example, when someone seems particularly interested in discussing the informational details of a topic, you should avoid talking about feelings and emotions. The reverse is also true. If the other person seems to be emotionally involved with the subject you are discussing, avoid talking about practical and logistical things until the person changes course. You don't want to be talking past one another, you want to be on the same wavelength. Imagine the disconnect there would be if a friend or family member was talking about the beauty of the mountains and how peaceful it is to vacation there, heuristic-based response, and you insist on discussing the geology of the region and the type of crops grown there, systematic-based response. You might as well have just arrived from Mars. Others talk about feelings and emotions, you talk about facts and figures. The result, disenchantment. They talk about numbers and logistics, you talk about mood and emotions. The result, calamity. Step 3. Giving people what they want. If you want to be charming, remember this point, it's not about you. Forget about yourself. Oblige the other person. When you are talking to someone on the phone, treat the mouthpiece of the phone as though it is the ear of the person you are talking to. Speak warmly and gently. Caress it with your voice. It will help make what you say sound more intimate, caring, and personal.
Here now are the 22 most powerful ideas ever to help you become more charming on the telephone. 1. Encourage the other person to talk. When it's your turn to talk, don't go into a series of mini monologues. Instead, ask questions and listen closely to the answers. The more you listen, the more charming you sound. 2. Speak clearly, simply, and directly. If the other person uses ordinary language without complicated words, you must do the same. Nothing can create a barrier more rapidly than sounding superior by using $10 words. Keep away from any language that cuts the other person out of the loop. 3. Listen attentively, because it's the only way you can learn. Most people would rather talk than listen, especially on the phone. Resist this tendency, and when the other person wants to talk, Focus on listening. 4. Be a patient listener. Although you may be ready with an answer after the first few words they say, allow them to complete their thoughts and air their feelings until it is your turn to speak. 5. Be an active listener. Use vocal and verbal acknowledgments and reassurances such as, yes, I see, really, you don't say, of course, and the like. These simple remarks let the other person know that you are fully engaged. 6. Interrupt without offending. Interrupting can be read as a negation of what a person is saying and thinking. It's a small put down. If you absolutely must interrupt, always take the blame. Say something like, "Forgive me for interrupting, but I didn't want to forget this point." 7. Use short, graphic examples and stories. Dry is deadly. When it's your turn to speak, create a little theater with your comments. It wasn't just a sunny day, it was a warm, glad to be alive, sunny day. Be colorful and pictorial. 8. Never assume, never presume. No matter how friendly the conversation is, never stretch the familiarity level above what the other person has said, especially when it comes to kidding around. If you can't say it to your mother or father, don't say it to someone else. 9. Don't rush. Slow down and use the deeper sounds of your voice. Slower and deeper is much more attractive in speech than faster and higher. 10. Use pauses. When you or the person you are addressing needs time to think, try introducing a pause. Warn the other person by saying, "Take a moment to consider that," or, "Give me a moment to think." When you pause, don't take too long or you'll get a, "Hello, are you there?" 11. Don't oversell information. Give people the information they need, no more. Some people will balk at making decisions or coming to conclusions if they are overwhelmed. Don't tell them what they don't want or need to know. Be alert to the fact that your overenthusiasm could overfill their interest level. 12. Be empathetic to people's moods and concerns. If they're unhappy, be unhappy for them. If they're glad, be glad for them. If you are trying to sell people on a product or an idea, remember that once they see you as a friend who cares about them, they will be more open to changing their minds or opinions. 13. Keep your voice animated and energized. Vary the volume of your voice and the speed of your words. Slow down on the more important comments, soften your more confidential remarks. Speed up with details and unimportant information. Nothing is more boring and demotivating than a flat, monotonous voice. It is more powerful than a sleeping pill. 14. Express your emotions. Your voice and manner should project enthusiasm, concern, excitement, and pleasure. You want to convey the intensity, even the passion, of your convictions. But take care not to overdo it, because then you're overselling. 15. Smile into the phone. A smile can be both heard and felt. It changes the shape of your mouth, which affects the tone of your voice. Your voice will sound warmer and friendlier if you smile when you are speaking. 16. Give people what you want from them. If you want them to be excited, you must sound excited. If you want them to be convinced, you must sound convinced. They won't give you what you don't give them. 17. Focus on talking about what is of interest to the other person. Make sure her ideas, opinions, and concerns are always foremost in the conversation. 18. Resist giving advice. This applies on the phone and when speaking with someone in person as well. If a person asks for advice, resist the temptation to respond. Instead ask, "What do you think you should do?" 19. Always ask permission. When they haven't asked for advice, but you know they need it, try saying, "May I make a suggestion?" Always be gentle. 20. Respond to anger or an aggressive manner with gentleness. If you respond in like manner, you may win the emotional battle, but you will surely lose the charm war. Remember that a soft answer turns away wrath. 21. Don't stop being charming before you've hung up. Be sure your charm extends into everything you say, including goodbyes. Have you ever spoken to someone on the phone who abruptly cuts off the conversation? It makes you wonder if the person meant anything he said, doesn't it? 22. Think of yourself as mentoring your listener. Try to be like the best mentor you can remember: informed, patient, kind, caring, concerned, warm, supportive, and protective. Strive to be genuinely helpful and friendly. Your tools for charming others. Resolve today to become an excellent and charming communicator on the phone. First, keep these suggestions on a single piece of paper and have them in front of you whenever you are speaking on the phone. Review them casually as you speak and look for opportunities to apply them. Second, treat each phone call as an important meeting with a special client. Get rid of all distractions and concentrate single-mindedly on the voice of the other person. With a little thought and practice, these skills will become invaluable in your social life and priceless in your business and career. In fact, they will do as much to improve the quality of your relationships as anything else you do.